So the question that you asked me was, what advice would I give entrepreneurs who are considering embarking on memberships and building a community? So that's a really good question because I recently just went through that. And I think there's a lot of things that you have to consider before you do that. For me, it wasn't just about the money. The whole idea of building community through membership base is really amazing because when someone decides to join a membership and a community, they are basically saying, yeah, I'm all in. And it's like you're speaking to a targeted market. The problem with that is that it only works on a large scale. So really, you have to have like thousands of people that are already kind of following you. So whether you're going from like YouTube or, you have some other large community, and then you're transferring hoping to transfer over people to follow you on, say, a Patreon, or nowadays, websites have their own membership forums, so you can create your own and do it through your own platform, which is what I did. But the reality is that only about a quarter of those people that you have as fans are going to follow you over. It could be less in some instances. So when you start with a relatively small number, you may think, hey, maybe my membership is $15 a month, and even if I had 20 people, that's $300, that I'm making. And if I only, part of that membership is I'm only doing 1 hour live stream, I'm making $300 for that hour. And that's pretty good. The problem with that is that people don't show up. And so there's another side of that, which is what I dealt with, which is you have to consider how you're going to feel emotionally and mentally and what it's going to trigger in you if you're like I was and you start with a small group of people and then they join, but they don't show up to any of your live streams. And then on top of that, they're not really watching your content. So what it brought up for me was the way that I described it to the people when I decided to close the membership group specifically for teaching and doing live streams. I likened it to being someone who's throwing a party, and you prepare all the food, you have a cake, you have balloons all set up, and not one of your guests shows up. You invited all these people and nobody showed up to your party. And then, just times that times every single time you go live. So the feelings that it could create inside of you are just, disappointment, over and over again, questioning why you're doing things. And this also could be a huge kind of waste of time for you because you could already have a lot of things that are really working in your life that you could be putting all those hours and all that thought process into the stuff that's already working instead of, creating this additional stream of money that, you may have, $300. I'm just going to go with that. If it ends up being like a small group of people, that's great. And over time you could say, yeah, I'll build it over time, which is what I was saying. But then ultimately I just realized for mental health, for emotional health, it wasn't good for me to feel that level of disappointment every time, I was putting my heart and soul into it and nobody would show up to my party. So for me, I think that if I ever did that again, I would do that again if I had thousands of followers, knowing that, even if a small amount, 0.25% of those thousands of people that came over, you're still talking about, if someone has 200,000 or whatever, whatever a quarter of that would be, even if it was only 5,000 people that came over, not only are you making money, but you're increasing the amount of people that are actually going to show up. And you don't need a large number of people to show up to the live streams because they're going to see that in replay if they want to. But it's about just having a group of people show up. So I would say you have to really consider all of those things. And it's nobody's fault if you decide to move on. And that's the other thing too, is I see people who create these, YouTube videos where they're blaming Patreon and they're all bitter, about how membership doesn't work and subscriptions don't work. And it's a brilliant idea, and it absolutely does work, but you have to have the right foundation before you do it. And if you're going to do it on a really small scale, you have to understand that, people are not going to show up in the numbers that you want them to. And how are you going to feel when you're taking time off camera to plan for what this event's going to be, and then only one or maybe no one shows up, and you're talking to, a live stream with no one there. And it doesn't matter that you're like, yeah, you can watch it and replay, it's all good. You're still going to have these emotions that you put so much into it, and nobody cared enough to show up. So it's a brilliant idea, and it works for a lot of people. But the common denominator that I've seen with each person that it works for is that they waited quite a while before they did it, and they had hundreds of thousands of followers before they actually went that route. So that would be my advice to you is, think about what you're doing it for, because there were two reasons why I did it. The number one reason was to build a community. I wanted to have that interaction with people. And the second reason was obviously money, right? You're wanting to do what you love and connect with people and use that as a money stream for you, for your entrepreneurship. But what was most important to me was I was doing it because I wanted to build that community, and I wanted to see that community grow. And as that community would grow, so would my success. So when the money was there with the small group that had joined, and it made it worth my hour or 2 hours that I was giving up of my time to hold these live streams. The other end of it that wasn't worth it for me, which was the main reason I did it, which was the community. If the community wasn't going to show up, if it was only going to be like one person or many times where I showed up to do it and there was 0 people and I'm talking to nobody, that's where I decided, my time is best suited in the other things that are really working. And community is still there through like social media and all that stuff. So the community wasn't going to go anywhere. It's just this private little community that really wasn't working. And those private people that were in that community were also already in the other bigger community that was for free. So ultimately I made the choice that I'm not losing anything, I'm not losing any of the community members by ending the membership. I still had them as part of my community. I just was deciding to end the private exclusive part of it. I was going to give up that small amount of money because it wasn't worth it for me to feel that level of disappointment and then constantly be dealing with that, versus just focus on the things that are working in your life and really work that element. So that would be my advice to you guys, is to really consider that when you are considering the type of memberships or subscriptions or any other streams of income. Really think those things out. And ultimately, if you do it and you decide that it's not for you and you shut it down, that's okay too, because I did that a couple of times, and that's how I know I worked it till the very end and it just did not work for me. It doesn't work for everybody. It's maybe not the direction that some people are meant to go, because life and the universe takes us in a different path. And just accept all those parts of learning and everything that you learned through that experience, and you apply it to the next thing that you're going to do. So that would be my advice. Thank you. Thanks for listening, and I will see you guys soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this, and if you've had this type of experience, I want to hear from you and what was your experience. All right, you guys, I'll see you soon. Bye.